people. Finished another book. Roman Conquests, Macedonia and Greece. The Roman Conquest thing, it's a series of books. I was at King Book today and I saw another one that was Gaul. And this was a pretty good book, so if I see some that maybe fill in the blanks for me, like this one has done, I'll pick them up, but I don't need the Gaul book because that's been covered. I've even read Caesar's account of that. And, I've never found a book on the Pyrrhic Wars. This one had a little bit of information on this King Pyrrhus. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I guess that could be considered the first war with the Greeks, because apparently, he was considered a Greek. Most of this has to do with Macedonia. There was the First, Second, and Third Macedonian War. At the end, they have a short war with the Achaean League. I don't know. The Greek names they're so hard to pronounce that it actually makes it hard to read and hard to remember some of this. But Polybius puts it really well here. This is why I read this stuff. And he has written a book. I don't know what it is, but this is how Polybius begins his book. For who is so worthless or indolent as not to wish to know by what means the Romans have succeeded in subjecting nearly the whole inhabited world to their sole government, a thing unique in history? Or who again is there so passionately devoted to other spectacles or studies as to regard anything as of greater moment than the acquisition of this knowledge? And you know what, Mr. Polybius, I know exactly how you feel. The other crap that's going on in this world doesn't compare to this. This was a 181-page book, and I read it really quickly. We go to this treaty between Philip of Macedon and Hannibal of Carthage. And that's the first Macedonian War. This is while Hannibal is still in Italy. And some of the Carthaginians and some of the Macedonians are actually captured in a ship taking this treaty to Philip for him to sign. And so Philip obviously never gets a chance to sign the treaty. But the treaty is reproduced here in this book. I've never seen it before, and it's kind of cool, but the author raises the question of whether this is really the treaty or whether this is just Roman propaganda. And the Romans were great at propaganda. Some of it is still accepted to this day. Anyone that's ever watched the big screen, the 3-hour movie with Elizabeth Taylor, Cleopatra, actually sees some Roman propaganda. Actium, where it's Mark Antony, I think, and Cleopatra have their navies bottled up in this harbor. And actually, I've read about it, and they knew that they were going to lose the battle against the Roman Navy because they were all fucked. There was some kind of disease that had broke out amongst them. But in the movie, it shows, battle being joined, and Cleopatra and the rest of the Egyptian ships take off and go back to Egypt. And Mark Antony is like, "Oh, Cleopatra, you fucking abandoned me." That's Roman propaganda. That was actually part of the plan. They knew they weren't going to win, and they wanted the Egyptian fleet to survive. This author's got a pretty good sense of humor. The beginning of the book, tells a little bit about all the Greek states, and it's really hard to follow. and it's hard to follow because I can't pronounce their fucking names. I mean, Athens, I can pronounce that. Sparta, that's pretty easy. But some of the other ones. So here's an example of this author's humor. And he's talking about Philip. Philip, the first Philip. Well, not Alexander's father. There was several Philips, but this Philip that rules Macedonia while these wars with Rome are going on. He rules Macedonia for 40 years, and he's there for 2 of the wars. Philip recently had learned the value of meticulous preparations in storming cities after he failed to take Larissa near Bylazora. Everything had gone perfectly until the Macedonians placed their scaling ladders against the city walls and found that they were too short. And then I go a long ways without any notes, and really this is the last note in the book. During 2 of these wars, you have Roman legions coming up against a Macedonian phalanx. And the Macedonians, changed the phalanx forever when they just lengthened their spears. They had 16-foot spears. And at this time, the legions were fighting with what they call a maniple, which apparently a maniple just means a handful. So it's like a few soldiers grouped together, and then they have a space between them and another group of a few soldiers. So the first meeting of a phalanx and a Roman legion is at Cynocephalae. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sure I'm not. The phalanx pushes them back. The way the Romans are fighting, the Macedonians are actually able to concentrate 10 spears on every Roman, and it doesn't go well for them. They get pushed back. However, if the phalanx is advancing over broken ground, or if the Romans are able to attack the flank, or even better, get behind the phalanx, it's all over for them. And the Greeks were a little bit more civilized about their warfare. They would actually surrender if they knew that the day was lost. And what they would do when they surrendered is they would just put their spear straight up. The Romans just kept hacking away. They didn't care if somebody was surrendering or not, especially if they had just been pushed back and they took some casualties. They would go on a nut and fucking just keep hacking away. And there was actually another one too with Philip's son. His name was Perseus. And there was another example, and almost the same thing happened where the phalanx looks like it's going to kick the shit out of the Romans at first, and then ends up, any kind of a little flanking attack, and the phalanx just kind of disintegrates. There's another war between some guys from the Seleucid Empire, which is... And I tried to think of where this would be, and I was a little bit, I thought the Seleucid was a little bit further north. I thought it was by the Black Sea, but it's actually Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Iran. Anyways, this is a good book. The author's name is Philip Matizak. It sounds like maybe he's Greek as well. Very good book. Went to King Book today, and I got 3 books. I was looking for 3 books in specific, and I didn't find none of those 3. I looked through the Gore Vidal stuff, and I couldn't find what I wanted there. But I never come out of that place empty-handed. This morning, I even started on Volume 2 of Gibbon's History of the Decline and Fall. So maybe I'll just keep going on that one. That one's only 600 pages. Thank you.